With over 85 years of experience, Minn Kota has truly revolutionized the trolling motor industry with the automated stow and deploy feature of the Minn Kota Ulterra and Riptide Ulterra trolling motor. To help make sure that you can get years of reliable performance from your investment, we're going to share a few quick and easy preventative maintenance tips that you can use to make sure you get the most out of your time on the water. For routine preventative maintenance, you'll want to have the following items: a 9/16" wrench or socket wrench, a 3/16" punch and hammer, a number 2 and number 3 Phillips screwdriver, a 3/16" Allen wrench, water-based spray like Armor All or Pledge, but just make sure that it's water-based, marine-grade grease, which is designed specifically to resist water and to stay in place, Johnson Outdoors part number 3397709 is a small tub of the grease that we use here at Minn Kota and can be ordered through motors.johnsonoutdoors.com. For now, let's start with the basics. With that being said, Minn Kota strongly recommends that you inspect the health of your batteries, including load testing them, no less than twice per fishing season. When doing this, be sure to include the inspection of all your wiring and connections as well. Remember that supplying clean and proper voltage to your trolling motor is critical to having a properly functioning motor on the water. If you choose to wire your trolling motor through a trolling motor plug, Minn Kota strongly recommends using a high-quality trolling motor plug that is built to withstand the rigors of the job. The Minn Kota MKR26 is specifically designed for just that in both fresh and saltwater applications, is completely sealed with silver-plated terminals, and is rated to supply continuous power up to 60 amps and up to 48 volts. Now, specifically for those of you in saltwater environments, make sure to give your trolling motor a good freshwater rinse after each use, or at least as often as practically possible. Repeated use in salt water without doing so will allow sticky salt residue to build up, which can cause binding or accelerated wear on important components over time. Saltwater residue obviously isn't a concern for motors used in freshwater, but keeping your trolling motor clean is still just as important. In most circumstances, we recommend rinsing your trolling motor at least after every 5 uses. However, if you commonly trailer your boat on gravel roads or over long distances, we strongly recommend rinsing your trolling motor more frequently. This will help to remove any buildup of sand, silt, or other abrasive debris that can also contribute to wear over time. We recommend using a towel or sponge to assist with the removal of saltwater residue or other buildup, especially if it's been a while since rinsing it off. When you're done, Minn Kota also recommends applying a water-based silicone to the shaft of the motor to help support freedom of movement within the mechanism. We'll look at a few other key areas that require regular lubrication later in the video. Another good checkpoint is to inspect for debris that may have gotten into the mechanism. Whether you were moving along beneath some overhanging trees to access some good structure or had your boat parked in an area uncovered for some time, falling or wind-blown debris can unknowingly work its way into important mechanical areas of your motor assembly and cause binding. Take the time to deploy your motor and make sure there are no foreign objects in or around the steering housing, tilt actuator, motor ramps, or latch pin areas. Minn Kota recommends doing this after each use. Let's review a few other checkpoints that, while not necessary after every use, should still be done at least once per month during your fishing season. First, we're going to remove the prop and check for weeds or fishing line that may have collected behind it. Before you proceed, make sure you've disconnected power from your trolling motor. Debris collected in this area will damage the shaft seal to your lower unit, resulting in water getting into the motor. Use a 9/16" wrench or socket to remove the prop nut and washer. Orient the prop blades in a horizontal position to prevent the prop pin from falling out and getting lost when you remove the prop, and then pull the prop straight off of the prop shaft. If the prop does not come off easily, pull on one blade of the prop while tapping the other blade with a rubber mallet. If this is necessary, be sure to tap as close to the hub of the prop as possible to avoid damaging the prop. Once the prop is removed, you can remove the prop pin. Don't be alarmed if you see a small amount of surface discoloration. These pins are made of a high-quality stainless steel and are passivated. If it does not come out easily, you can use a 3/16" punch and hammer to carefully tap it out. If this is necessary, be sure to support the prop shaft while doing this to avoid damaging the prop shaft. Once removed, check to see if your prop pin is bent. If it is, do not reuse it. Go to minnkotamotors.com and click on the Buy Parts link at the top of the page to order a replacement prop pin, part number 2262658. With the prop pin removed, you can slide anything collected on the prop shaft off of it and discard it. There are no washers between the prop and the motor. So if you find a plastic disc-shaped item present, that is actually fishing line that collected over time and heated up enough to melt and to be formed into a disc. It is not part of the motor. This is also a good time to inspect the outer rubber shaft seal while the prop is off. If debris is allowed to sit behind the prop for too long, it can cause damage to this seal. Take the time to inspect your prop for damage regularly. A damaged or unbalanced prop will affect the thrust output and sound of your motor. If you find that your prop has become damaged or unbalanced, it should be replaced. Go to minnkotamotors.com and click on the Buy Parts link at the top of the page to order a replacement. Item 1378132 is the replacement prop for an 80-pound thrust Ulterra, and item 1378160 is the prop for a 112-pound thrust Ulterra. If you operate in particularly difficult terrain, it may be a good idea to keep a spare prop and a couple of prop drive pins on hand just in case. Now let's go back and review some of the other critical areas on the motor that require regular lubrication for good long-term performance. Apply a thin layer of marine-grade grease onto the latch pin ends and the base extrusion where the latch pin contacts it, including the latch slots. It's easiest to do this while the motor is in the stowed position. We covered this earlier, but it's very important to keep the motor shaft and motor ramps clean and lightly lubricated using a water-based silicone. This will minimize any potential binding while stowing and deploying the Ulterra. With the motor stowed, spray the shaft directly with the silicone spray, then wipe it dry. Next, deploy the motor and spray the section of the shaft that was covered by the steering housing and trim housing while the motor was stowed. Wipe this area dry also. Keep in mind that it is perfectly acceptable to spray this on the entire motor shaft, including the lift belt, as long as you're using a water-based silicone lubricant. The motor ramps are where the lower unit rests when the motor is in the stowed position. If not properly cared for, these can contribute to binding, so cleaning and lubrication is important. With the motor deployed, spray the top surface of the motor ramps where the motor sits and wipe dry. Please also bear in mind that we do not recommend lubricating the threaded shaft of the tilt actuator. This mechanism does not require lubrication, and the addition of a lubricant to this could actually attract grit that could actually contribute to wear unnecessarily. Lastly, twice per year we recommend the inspection, cleaning, and lubrication of the Plunger actuator and the latch cam pin sensor actuator. To perform this work, you'll need to have the motor in the deployed state. The Plunger actuator tells the motor when the motor is in the stowed state. If this gets stuck, the motor will not deploy properly because it will think it's in the stowed position. The plunger is built into the port or left motor ramp. Check to see that the plunger mechanism moves up and down freely without sticking. If there is no evidence of sticky residue or debris, there is no need to access the plunger any further. Spray a small amount of water-based silicone onto and around the plunger and push the plunger up and down a few times to distribute the lubricant. Then, go ahead and wipe off any excess. If you need access to the plunger, you'll need to remove the motor rest to clean the plunger assembly. Using a number 3 Phillips head screwdriver, remove the 2 screws from the left side plate and remove the left side plate. Next, use the 3/16" Allen wrench to remove the 2 screws from the motor ramp. When removing the motor ramp from the extrusion, take care not to damage the wires from the plunger sensor. If you notice that your plunger actuator looks differently than the one shown here, Minn Kota recommends ordering a replacement motor rest and plunger kit. For all 112-pound thrust Ulterra motors, you'll need part number 2773947. For an 80-pound freshwater Ulterra, you'll need part number 2773946. Or for an 80-pound Riptide Ulterra, you'll need part number 2773948. If you choose not to order the replacement plunger, you can still proceed with cleaning and lubricating the one you have. The plunger actuator is retained by a screw and a washer. Use the Phillips screwdriver to remove that screw. Be aware that there is a fair amount of spring pressure on the actuator and that it may come unseated as you remove the screw and washer. With the screw and washer removed, lift the actuator out of the motor rest. Wipe off any debris that may have collected in this area, and then use a water-based silicone to lubricate the opening of the motor rest and the plunger actuator. Wipe off any excess with a rag. Reinstall the plunger actuator in the motor rest. It is critical that the end of the spring rest on the shelf of the motor rest. Failure to reinstall this properly may result in motor malfunction. Hold the actuator in place and reinstall the screw and washer. Reposition the motor rest, taking care to ensure the wires to the sensor are routed in the notch on the back side of the motor rest, such that the wires are not pinched when the screws are tightened down. Use the 3/16" Allen key to install the screws for the motor rest. Next, reposition the side plate, making sure not to pinch any of the sensor wires. Use the Phillips screwdriver to reinstall the screws, retaining the side plate. Next, the latch cam pin sensor actuator tells the motor when the motor is in the fully deployed state. If this gets stuck, the motor will not stow properly because it will think it is in the deployed position. The latch cam pin sensor and actuator are located under the right or starboard motor rest. To access it, you'll need to remove the side plate and motor rest. Use a number 3 Phillips screwdriver to remove the 2 screws from the right side plate and remove the right side plate. Next, use the 3/16" Allen wrench to remove the 2 screws from the motor ramp. When removing the motor ramp from the extrusion, take care not to damage the wires from the plunger sensor. Be sure to inspect the actuator arm for any cracks or other damage to the plastic arm. Also, take note of the pin and other components for any signs of corrosion. If any damage or corrosion is observed to this assembly, the cam pin sensor actuator should be replaced with part number 2777903. Take note of the assembled position and orientation of the cam pin sensor actuator, using a Phillips screwdriver to remove the screw that retains it. Slide the bushing out of the actuator and clean all debris from all components of the mechanism. Then, apply a thin layer of marine-grade grease to the components. Reassemble these components and reposition the actuator and then reinstall the screw. Be sure to verify that the actuator moves freely.
If your motor was manufactured in 2020 or later, it may have the pictured black Allen head screw retaining the latch cam actuator sensor. If this is the case, do not grease the area. Instead, clean it with water-based silicone. If removal of the screw is necessary to clear debris, it should not be reused. It must be replaced.
Reposition the motor rest, taking care that the wires to the sensor are properly routed in the notch in the back end of the motor rest, such that the wires are not pinched when the screws are tightened back down. Use the 3/16" Allen wrench to reinstall the screws to the motor rest. Reposition the side plate, making sure not to pinch any of the sensor wires. Using the No. 3 Phillips screwdriver to reinstall the screws that retain the side plate. Following these few quick and easy preventative maintenance tips will help to ensure that you get years of trouble-free use from your Minn Kota Ulterra or Riptide Ulterra trolling motor.